Thrive College Podcast. I'm Dena Davidson, host of the podcast, and today we have Charmaine Wells in the studio. Give up the round of applause.
Oh.
Very nice. I like it. No hoots and hollers from you, though.
No.
Not so much a hoot and holler.
No.
Well, Charmaine, give us a little bit of your background.
Mm-hmm.
I know you have a really fun journey into the music industry and what you're doing nowadays.
Yeah, wow, that's a lot.
I know.
Tell my life story. No big deal.
Yeah.
I was raised in Australia in a full-time music ministry called Endless Praise. And that was, that kind of officially started the year that I was born. And the year that I was born, they did like a 10-month tour through Australia, New Zealand, America, and Central and South America. Wow. And I think it was about, maybe 6 months into it that my parents found out they were pregnant with me.
Wow.
And they were like the managers, the leaders of this group. And they were like, do we cancel a whole tour? And they were so young. And they were just so on fire for the Lord. I don't know if I would do this. Jesus, I'm sorry. But they were like, no, it says to go preach the gospel to all nations and tongues. It doesn't say except when you're pregnant. So they went out. Wow. And on the road, my mum was, I think she was about 6 months when they were in New Zealand. They told her that she was having twins and she freaked out. Because there wasn't ultrasounds. It wasn't like you could just walk into she didn't have any insurance. They were always on the road. Mm-hmm. So I ended up being born in the America part of the tour in West Covina, California. So and like a week after I was born, my mum was back on the road with me. And there was a group of like 20 of them on the road. A lot of them were family. And my family in Australia didn't see me until I was about 5 or 6 months old. I know, is that crazy?
So crazy.
Now that I have kids of my own, I'm like, wow, that was crazy.
Yeah. How do you function, Mom, on the road?
She's super young and full of energy, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I think she could handle more than I did at 30, So
fast forwarding in your story,
yes.
re-enter the music industry.
Yeah, never thought that would ever come into play, my American citizenship. I have dual citizenship.
Right.
And so, long story short, so many details. I got signed to a label in Nashville, Tennessee. And so that's when I moved. I was 16 years old.
Wow.
And my parents moved with me. I don't have any siblings. I have so many cousins, just 30 first cousins and 30-something second cousins or whatever. So, so moved, got signed, did the whole Christian artist, go on tours, all that sort of stuff for, I think, about 15 years. I don't know. My math's not great, but roughly about that. And it was through that I met this dude called Aaron Padilla. Mm-hmm. And he was on the road. We were both kids on the road. And we were just friends for years and years. And he moved out to California. And after a while, he started like calling and he was like, hey, you should come visit this church. I think you'd really like it. And I was so confused. I was like, why? Like, do you want me to do a concert? Like, what am I doing? He was like, just come and hang with us. And I was like, I'll come hang. Okay. But it took 3 years. And then eventually it worked out because I was always on the road. And that was it. I think the Lord was telling me this is where I needed to be. But it still took me a year to actually realize that. And back and forth from California to Tennessee for a year. And then after a year, the Lord was like, this is it. And I met my husband. And it was actually because of you.
Credit where credit is due. Thank you.
Yeah, it was like a year into Bayside. And back then, it was called The Shore, right? And college ministry, thank you. And yeah, he was supposed to be you were supposed to be interviewing me, I think. And you did the last minute switch. You were like, it'd be way more interesting if a guy is interviewing a girl, and you got me to come and talk about worship. And apparently everybody and their mother was taking photos of us on stage and being like,
there was such a vibe in there. Like, if you were in the room, like the atmosphere was electric. Everyone was, at one point you said, oh, my mom would love you.
oh
And the
yeah,
room
well,
just
I
goes,
didn't.
"Ah."
Yeah, I didn't mean it like that. But yes, as soon as I said that, I was like, mistake in my head. But yeah, apparently not. That was my husband and I didn't even know it. But yeah, I mean, the rest is almost history now. It feels like that. It is, because now I've entered into a whole new chapter of like not going on the road as much. I mean, I am through Thrive Worship. I'm a part of, the team, and I'm a worship pastor, and my station is Adventure Bayside, and I work with Peter Burton, and it's wonderful. But like, I'm so full with like my children and my husband, who is like a Viking god. He's got this glorious red hair. Don't tell him the god part though. That'll just, yeah, it's not. And he's got a huge head. So, but yeah, that's just a little bit of me in a nutshell. Yeah.
So fun. Well, today in the studio, we have Kayla Brilliante. Did I say it right?
Yes, you did.
I always like to emphasize like the brilliant, like you're so brilliant. That's what I
What a great last name.
But tell us just a little bit about yourself, your internship here at Bayside, what you're hoping to do one day.
Yeah, so like you said, my name is Caleb Brilliante. I've been a worship intern for Thrive College at our Blue Oaks campus. My dream one day is to be a full-time worship pastor,
Awesome.
possibly writing music too. So
Love it. Yeah. That is great.
So here's what I've been told about Caleb. He keeps this part very under wraps, but that he's incredibly sarcastic. So I feel like maybe you just keep that on the down low. But I've walked past some hallway conversations and I'm like, who gave that zinger? That was Caleb. So yes, your undertold part of your personality.
That's great.
Thanks for revealing it to the world.
I know. Well, you and all of Australia would get along well. So,
So Thrive College Podcast, we always want to pass the mic to the rising generation of leaders.
awesome.
And so we're going to have Caleb be asking the questions. So what do you have for us?
yeah, so you kind of already sort of answered this in your story, but my first question I had for you was with being in Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
What was kind of your story of what you did in Nashville, and then your move to Bayside and leading worship here at Bayside?
Yeah, I think one couldn't have happened without the other. So Thrive College is basically my whole life almost, but on the road.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I was traveling with my parents' ministry, we would set up all the equipment, the sound system. I had to learn all the cables, and then it was like the merch table at the back, and then talking to people, and we would get host homed out. So then we would stay in people's homes
Mm-hmm.
from that church that night. And so you'd have to learn how to talk with different cultures and different people and different walks of life. And so it was like a full, just very holistic training in ministry,
Mm-hmm.
So when I went to I got signed and I was in Nashville and writing songs, and that was a whole other training because it was a whole new stage. It was a whole new setup,
Mm-hmm.
Different audiences, different culture. The American culture was a big thing to get used to, and Starbucks was everywhere. That wasn't a thing in Australia. It still isn't really, but like even walking into a Starbucks one time, side note, there was ladies having a Bible study. And Australia, I think, is still one of the top 10 atheist countries in the world,
Oh, wow.
where it's just very open. It's not that they're against Christianity. It's just not as, not like America in that aspect. So walking in and seeing somebody like praying and doing a Bible study, my mind was blown. I was 16. I was like, are they allowed to do that here? I don't know. So like the culture was wonderful, but it was just so different. And so just learning all of that, I was just all a part of it, right? And I don't think if I had all those years of being on the road that I could have stepped into something like Bayside and a stage and in worship leading and have done that,
Mm-hmm.
It was all college for me. It was all training.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that's how God works. Hey, he doesn't waste anything. Whatever season you're in, whatever your working at, even if it's minute and doesn't feel important, or this tiny song that you're never going to show anybody, or, and that's fine that you never show anybody, but that is actually all training. All of that is making you better at your craft and your gifting and what the Lord has given you for the next season.
That's great.
Yeah.
Tell me about, I feel like you live the dream, for so many of our students listening, that is the dream, being in Nashville, being signed, getting to be part of an industry that they love. Tell us about, it can be pros or cons, just some of the hidden sides of what they may not be expecting. Like there's the maybe fantasized version that they see on Instagram, but what's it like to actually be in there, for better or for worse?
Yeah, I mean, the industry it's a business for sure. Like you are the product, or you're trying to be a product of sorts. And there's just pros and cons with everything, because it's a business. If it's not working, you may not have the financial backing of a label, and there's all these ups and downs. And it is as much as people say it isn't, it is a straight up like competition. And it's hard not to get into that mindset, because it is technically a Christian industry, right? So even the business side of things sometimes feels like it's working directly opposite to like the ministry side of things, and what's important and what you should care about, and the accolades or the awards, or even how much money you're making really shouldn't. Well, there's just got to be balance, and it's hard to keep that balance. There's always that tension. And of course, with most things in life, it's not a problem to be solved. It's just a tension. What is it? To be managed. Yeah. So it's like, it can be lonely. It can be stressful if you let that stuff get to you, as far as, whether or not I'm selling enough CDs, or whether or not my stuff's getting on the radio, or because it's all a bit of a hustle. But then for some people, that's the fun of it, is like getting connected and writing songs. And to be honest, to this day, writing songs and creating music in the studio is still by far like my favorite thing to do. Even if nobody hears it and it never gets out, like just creating something new with friends. And I was privileged enough to be able to do a lot of my albums with some of my closest friends, which is not always the case. I still feel like that was the best part of it, because it's a town filled with creative people, which is a lot of fun.
So fun. It's a great first question.
Yeah. So when you're leading worship, or just in worship in general, how do you differentiate, or how do I ask this? Where's the line between having excellence in your worship, but not being too showy or not making it feel like a concert? How do you like separate those two?
I don't know if they can really be separated, because this is still a craft, right? This is still your instrument, whether it is a physical instrument that you're playing, but really you as a whole are the instrument, right? You're leading people through your voice, through your words, through your exhortation, through your actual instrument, through how you're playing with the band. Like the whole thing is got to be well executed, right? So that it doesn't become a distraction.
Yeah.
So the more excellent you can be in how you sing your notes, whether it's in tune, whether you remember the words, which I never do sometimes. And I sang a song like 1,000 times, and I'm like, what is the word to beautiful name?
Yeah.
Is it wonderful? Is it beautiful? Which one? We all get into that, but I think when the Israelites, right, were in the desert, and God asked them to set up that tent, and then eventually David and Solomon, right, they set up the actual temple, and this was a place of worship, and everything that was, built from the foundation up to the artwork that they would put on the scribes on the pillars, to even what the priest would wear was screaming the gospel, right? It was telling the story, because they didn't really have like books, they didn't have TikTok, they didn't have like the internet to go and look it up for yourself. They literally had this temple as kind of the story of God's love for us, right? The story of redemption. And so when you know, David and Solomon, when they started to build this, they got skilled people to do it. You know, people that were at the highest of their ability, because this was a place where other people were going to meet God. And so I see it the same way to anybody who wants to worship and wants to, it is a kind of a hybrid of this professionalism, perfecting your art. Yes, it is sometimes a bit of it is a stage that you're on. Sometimes you're not going to feel everything that you're saying, but you're still going to act like it, right? Because you're leading people into something much greater than the thing that you're feeling in the moment, whether it's good or bad, you know, whether you're in it or not type thing, you know. And so because it is your job to present as best as you can this beautiful story of redemption. Yeah. You know.
That's good. And within that, how do you, like, if you start to feel like you're becoming a little prideful in that, how do you combat that? How do you not get to that place where you're like, I'm up here, everyone else is down here?
Oh, yeah. Well, the moment that pops into my head, I say, I am not Beyonce, and I will never be Beyonce. There will always be somebody better than me, you know. I'm not it's hard for me to get into that. Not that I don't feel, you know, sometimes I have a problem the other direction, kind of like Moses did, where he was like, oh, no. I was so unbelieving of self that it went still in an unhealthy direction, you know what I mean? I tend to lean towards that, but everybody has their ego to contend with, right? Because whether you're super insecure or super kind of think you're awesome, that's still ego, you know, that's still self-centered sort of, you're banking everything on you, you know. The truth of the matter is that I could sing a song, but it's the Spirit of God that's going to bring it alive in somebody's heart. At the end of the day, I can't do that, you know. I'm still just like a vessel. I wouldn't stay too long in the wrestling of the ego. I would say if that pops up in your head, if you're wrestling with it, if there's competition, if there's the first thing you got to be aware of is that, hey, this is my insecurity, this is my ego. And the second thing to do is like, God, I need you to just take this. I need you to help me walk through this. And then keep the main thing, which is just doing the best that you can and then using that for him.
That's so good. I feel like it's so interesting how, you know, really we can go into error in opposite directions. One is we can be so focused on, and I did great, like walking off the stage, like the way I ushered people into God's presence. It's just like, I felt like the room was with me, and just, like, that's like one side of bad, and then the other side of bad, it kind of can be this movement that I see within both speakers and even worship leaders of like, I just want to disappear off the stage, like I just like, I don't even know, like, can I go on? And they're just so filled with anxiety that they almost don't even show up to the moment.
Right.
And they're full of giftedness.
Right.
But I think what the crux of what you're saying is, whichever error it is, just try to get the focus off of yourself.
Right.
It's a lot of self-thinking.
Take yourself out of the equation.
Think about God. Think about the songs you're singing.
Right.
Think about the people. Start interceding for them. I think that's just really, really sound advice for worship leading, but also whatever you're doing that's within the realm of opportunity and giftedness.
Yeah.
So good.
When I sing next to Melinda, I stay in my lane. Do you know what I mean? Like she is like the living Beyonce that we have at Bayside. You know, she's like, she can do things with her vocal ability. She can usher people into the presence of the Lord with like one note. Like it's amazing, you know. I stay in my lane. One time she did a run. We were in the car and we were on our way to a conference and we just got off the plane. So we were in the car and we were having some food and we're listening to music and she does this awesome run. I was like, I'm going to try and do that too. I botched it in front of her. It was so embarrassing. And we both went silent and I was like, I'm just going to stay in my lane. And she was like, yes, sis. and we kept going on. We're great friends. Yeah.
That's encouraging.
Yeah.
Someone at your level, there's still someone to look to that you're thinking, like,
Oh.
wow, they're further than I am.
1000%. But see, that's not to. Here's the wonderful thing. There was this little boy amongst all the disciples that somehow managed to give his fish and loaves to Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
When Jesus was asking his disciples to do something nearly impossible. No, it was impossible.
Mm-hmm.
The disciples were taking the measurements. They were doing the numbers, and they were like, a year's wages could not feed this multitude of people. And God was like, you need to feed them. So this little kid pops out of nowhere, whoever it was, maybe a brother of the disciples, whatever, and hands him his food. Like, that little guy is my encouragement, because whatever I have, no matter how small, if I give it to Jesus, he can feed multitudes. He can feed thousands of people. His spirit can go into the heart and turn a heart of stone into a heart of flesh if I give it to him. And so I'm like, man, I'm so happy to be around Melinda. She's so talented and so incredible. And the Lord is going to use her in a mighty way. And the Lord is equally going to use me in a mighty way too.
That's good.
That's really good. Well, Charmaine, we always have one final question on the podcast. So this is a podcast for the rising generation of Christian leaders. So what is the one thing that you would say to a young Christian leader?
Oh my gosh, the one thing. Wow.
No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. Wish you could give me this question like before.
So sorry, I could have texted you that one. I'm like, Charmaine.
Oh,
all the other ones you were happy to have spring. This one,
but this one. Oh, okay. So just the one thing I would say to a young Christian leader. Oh my goodness. Oh, I feel like there are so many, but I have to say one thing. Oh my goodness. What would I want to hear? There's so many things at the top of my head.
Yeah.
I would say, man, there's so much work to be done. Nothing is wasted. Go after it. Whatever you're in, go after it. This is what you have. Where you are at right now is where God has you. Not that this will be forever. It won't. So whatever it is, whatever your hand finds to do, do it unto the Lord, because he is on the move. It is happening right now. The kingdom of God is alive and well. We've got work to do. Just go after it.
So
that's good.
That's a good one day. We'll take it. We'll have you back on here so you can share 40 more things.
Oh my gosh, yes. And let me just share more stories about my wonderful husband and family.
Yes, and call him the Viking God.
No, without the God.
Oh, without the God. Sorry.
Let's scratch that out. Just edit that out.
Yeah.
He hears it, goes to his head.
Right.
So
Right. Well, thank you so much, Charmaine, for coming on the podcast, sharing your heart, and
No worries.
calling us to do the work that God has called us to do and has put in front of us. That is such a good work.
Oh, thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you for joining us today on the Thrive College podcast. We hope that today's episode has empowered you to navigate the challenges and the opportunities of your future in your faith. If you really enjoyed our conversation today and appreciated what we had to offer, we would love for you to write a 5-star written review and share it with your friends. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.